We're here with another grammar instructional video. Today we're talking about the independent clause. The way I always remember it is an independent clause is sort of like crab clause, and it can pinch you. To pinch you, it needs two things. So it needs the subject and the verb, which I've put over here, and it's a very independent crab. It can hold its own in a fight. So those are the three things you need: a subject, a verb, and can stand on its own. So that's the way to see if you have an independent clause when you're analyzing a group of words. Does it have a subject in it? Does it have a verb in it? Can it stand on its own? So let's take a look at this in practice. So, got some pretty easy sentences to start. So the first sentence here, if you remember from our earlier videos, walked is our verb. It's an action to walk. And so the subject is going to be to the left of this verb, and the is an adjective, so it's not going to count. It's an article adjective. And so dog is our subject. Check. Walked is our verb. Check. And can the sentence stand on its own? Independent crab. The dog walked. That's sort of an informal test. We'll talk a little bit more about number 3 over here in a second. But yes, it can stand on its own. 3 checks. It's going to be an independent clause. Check, check, check. Independent clause. Taking a look at this next sentence over here below, the dog walked is still going to be our independent clause. I've just added a prepositional phrase on the backside in the park. And so I typically like to keep the independent clauses and the prepositional phrases and subordinate clauses, all of those things, separate. So the way I would define it is I would say this equation of this sentence right here would be independent clause followed by a prepositional phrase right here. So the dog walked has a subject, a verb, it can stand on its own, and then you have a prepositional phrase after it with in being the preposition, park being the object of the preposition. So let's take another look at some more complicated understanding. Some of us get confused by, Some of us get confused a little bit by what does the third one mean? What does stand on its own really mean? So if you have an independent clause like I like cheese, that has a subject, it has a verb, like, and it can stand on its own. You can say it and it makes sense. But if you add a word in front of it called a subordinator, there's a separate video on this later, it changes it and it means it's not an independent clause anymore because it can't stand on its own as an independent thought. So you could say, I like cheese. That stands on its own. But if you said, because I like cheese, it sounds like there should be something after it, like a thought should follow it. So in this case, I like cheese is an independent clause, but if you add the word because in front of it, it no longer fits rule number 3 here. So if you wanted it to fit rule number 3, you would need to add something after it like, because I like cheese, I eat Kraft Singles. I eat Kraft Singles is actually going to be your independent clause because it has a subject, I eat is your verb, and it can stand on its own. I eat Kraft Singles. Okay. Same thing here on the freeway. A prepositional phrase is not going to be your independent clause. So I saw a car accident. That's going to be your independent clause. Oops, that's not a very good circle. So I saw a car accident. Saw is your verb. I is your subject. It can stand on its own. So I saw a car accident is independent clause. Same thing here. The pride in her heart was her downfall. Was is your verb. Pride is your subject. So it's got a subject and a verb, and it can stand on its own. So that's an independent clause. And you can use these same rules going forward and apply them to really complicated sentences. One of my favorite quotations by Anne Frank here is, dead people receive more flowers than living ones because regret is stronger than gratitude. You know, we can run our same analysis using these 3 very simple rules over here. You'll notice that the word because is triggering that previous slide about that's not going to be an independent clause. So in theory, regret is stronger than gratitude is an independent clause, but because we have the word because in front of it, none of this is going to be an independent clause. It's actually our subordinate clause. So none of this is an independent clause because we've got that keyword because in front of it. So receive is our verb. People is our subject. You got a subject and a verb. So here's your independent clause. Dead people receive more flowers than living ones. That's your independent clause. So this is it right here. So you can use these same rules, these 1, 2, 3 rules. While they are very simple, they are very formal and very effective in spotting independent clauses within larger sentences. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.